The Canada-U.S. Pacific frontier. It is a unique political divide, from remote offshore islands to the 49th parallel and beyond, with complex boundaries charted more than a century ago.
To get to Point Roberts, you have to go through 2 international borders, which makes life interesting for us all.
Landscape and wildlife seemingly foreign to the Great White North.
People find it hard to believe that rattlesnakes exist up into Canada.
And a rare look into search and rescue operations along this vast coastline.
Being right on the mountains and the water provides us with many different types of jobs.
Now, we trace the secrets of the world's longest undefended border, more than 6,000 kilometers of rugged American frontier. Canada, over the edge.
A montage of Canadian people and landmarks. Farmlands, monuments, miners, Canadian Mounted Police, a crystal, bridge, container boat, scuba diver, Niagara Falls, the CN Tower, Parliament Building, mountains and islands, a fisherman, rocky coastlines, and a lighthouse. Title, Canada Over the Edge. A shot from ocean level, rising and moving toward a wooded island with a lighthouse perched on the edge.
On the Pacific boundary dividing Canada and the United States, Cattle Point Lighthouse marks the entrance to the San Juan Islands.
Aerial view of the Cattle Point Lighthouse and rugged Pacific coastline. Graphic, Juan de Fuca, British Columbia, Canada.
The islands are an archipelago set between the waters of Juan de Fuca Strait to the south and Georgia Strait to the north.
Aerial view of the islands and then a panoramic shot of Cattle Point Lighthouse and a small community in the background.
Today, the San Juan Islands are American territory. But barely a century ago, they marked one of the last territorial disputes along this divide. In 1846, the Oregon Treaty determined the Canada-U.S. border would veer south once the 49th parallel reached the west coast.
Aerial view of the islands.
The border weaved in and out of these islands. Vancouver Island was made part of Canada, but the status of the San Juan Islands was unclear. The islands were claimed by America and Britain, and when a British pig was shot by an American settler in 1859, tensions escalated. Reinforcements were called in, and the Pig War lasted more than a decade. Finally, in 1871, the dispute was settled in arbitration in favor of the Americans.
Shot of a large clearing near the coast on an island.
Today, San Juan Island National Historic Park preserves the American and British camps that existed during the bloodless battle.
A white building sits enclosed by a fence. Scene change. A city sits at the base of rugged mountains.
Further north, the city of Vancouver sits on the horizon.
Aerial view of Vancouver, a city of skyscrapers with a mountainous backdrop on the Pacific coast.
It is home to 600,000 people, featuring a modern cityscape lined by soaring skyscrapers.
A different view of Vancouver from the woods.
It is surrounded by diverse, bustling suburbs.
View of water winding around the suburbs.
In total, the Vancouver metropolitan area is home to 2.3 million people, the third largest city in Canada.
An aerial view of the city waterfront shows a beautiful active city with a dockyard and cruise ship.
It is a world-class setting, nestled between the mountains and the sea.
Aerial views of the scenic city and varied skyscrapers. Close-up of a float plane lifting from the water in front of Canada Place.
The city is a transportation hub, with float planes and pleasure craft coming and going.
A view of the city from the mountaintop.
And the landscape surrounding draws hikers and explorers from around the world.
A hiker sits on a rock enjoying the view.
With a never-ending stream of action and adventure, search and rescue, has become key to safety here.
A man puts on his flight suit in front of a yellow helicopter. Close-up shot of a helmet that reads Mountain Rescue Service, Canada.
From their base of operations at Vancouver's airport, Talon Helicopters is just one branch of this incredible network.
My name is Kelsey Wheeler. I'm the chief pilot for Talon Helicopters, and we're in Vancouver, BC. Right now, we're just to the north of the 49th parallel on the west coast of Canada.
Wheeler has lived and flown in every region of Canada. Working out of Vancouver offers constant challenges as part of the SAR, or search and rescue community.
As a helicopter pilot in Vancouver, a bit of a unique scenario because of the cityscape, but being right on the mountains and the water provides us with many different types of jobs.
Kelsey approaches the helicopter, which sits on a wheeled platform.
The search and rescue work that we do involves working with the local volunteer SAR community. With Vancouver having a high population centered in one area and the mountains so close, it's very accessible for anybody to hop on a bus or just drive to a parking lot and then be off hiking in the mountains.
With such a formidable, vast landscape throughout the border region, pilots like Wheeler are on call around the clock.
Typically, you get a call around dinner time on a Saturday or Sunday night, and then we would come into the airport. Our machines are ready to go as far as being fueled and equipped for a search and rescue.
Roger, taxi runway 33. On runway 7 and back taxi up to Charlie 8.
The equipment for search and rescue, typically, once we've found the subject, is it's called a HETS equipment, Human External Transport System. So what happens is the aircraft is configured so that a long line is attached along with a belly band.
Kelsey opens a red bag.
So this is a long line system that we use for moving external loads, moving equipment that doesn't fit in the helicopter or is too heavy to go in the helicopter. So basically, you just have a electric swivel that is hooked to a line that would then go to the helicopter, like so. There's an electrical cable that runs through the middle of this line that's hooked to the helicopter. Allows me to release the hook, which is typically 150 or 200 feet away at the bottom here. So I'll be able to move a load in a net or with straps or whatever it is. And then once I put the load down, if there was nobody there to receive it, I can just hit that button and the load will release, delivering the load to wherever it needed to be.
The helicopters used by Wheeler and his team are carefully chosen for their power and versatility in the harsh mountain environment.
The helicopters we use are typically A-Stars, and the reason we use them in this area is they're a good mountain helicopter. They have ample power to work in the mountainous areas and to deal with the winds and the density altitudes. However, are also small enough that they can land in smaller areas to be able to let search and rescue people off.
Kelsey gets in the helicopter, fastens his seatbelt, and then puts on his helmet.
Start Track 401, supposed to be climbing out of 1.8 for 13,000. Roger, taxi runway 33.
He lowers a lever with his left hand and the blades begin to move. He activates the controls to prepare for flight.
686 frequency change, please. That's a 686 frequency change approved.
Yeah, so when we're out working with the SAR volunteers and the search and rescue stuff, a lot of the things we're thinking about obviously is the routes they could have taken. The time of day for us is a big thing because once it gets dark, we can't be flying in the mountains after dark. So everything that goes along with having volunteers and people out searching, keeping them safe as far as managing my fuel and daylight and time and weather. That's sort of the big overall picture is what we're most interested about.
Once in operation, Wheeler and the SAR team follow a series of procedures.
The helicopter rises with a man positioned below on the rescue line.
They locate their subject, either visually or through cell communication.
3 men are on a large rock by an inland rapid river. 1 man from the rescue team is lowered on the rock. They take his hand. He unhooks himself from the rescue line and attaches the men's packs, which are raised to the helicopter.
They find a safe location nearby to set up and fly rescuers on the long line into the danger zone.
The long line is lowered.
Once on the ground, the rescuers make contact with the individual. Using a harness, they connect the individual to the long line. Finally, they are airlifted to safety. But every rescue presents its own challenges.
If we have a specific trail that somebody's supposed to be hiking, of course, start on that trail. Take escape routes or areas where they may have gotten off trail.
View of low clouds hanging on the mountaintops.
We've had people signal us with either flashlights. There was one instance a couple years ago. It was a guy in a deep gully, and he ended up using his camera, the flash on the camera, to signal us as we flew overhead, and that caught the eye of one of the searchers, and then we were able to long line him out.
A hiker is lowered onto a beach where the other rescue staff are located. Close-up of Kelsey's hand operating the helicopter controls.
The search and rescue work is, very personally rewarding. We did a rescue recently where we found him very quickly in the morning, and he was on a very precarious ledge where he had nowhere to go. And as we hovered up to assess the situation, we then had to leave him to go get the flight rescue team to be able to come in and long line him out. And when I talked to him afterwards, he said once the helicopter left, he actually didn't know if we were going to come back. So here's a guy with no cell phone, no communication, is literally trapped on a 2-foot by 2-foot ledge, and he doesn't know if somebody's going to come back and rescue him. He was probably, 25 or 30 years old, but for his mom to run up and, hug him, it's, definitely enjoyable and rewarding thing to see.
The helicopter flies over the vast ocean.
I think that's an interesting thing.
This one piece will make 52 layers.
Watch on mobile devices or the big screen. All for free. No subscription required.
Aerial view of a community on one of the islands.
Heading east from the Strait of Juan de Fuca, we begin a journey along the famed 49th parallel, dividing Canada and the United States.
A straight cleared line in the woods divides the community from woodlands. Graphic, Point Roberts, Washington, United States.
But the first point of land along the parallel is a geographic anomaly. Point Roberts measures just 12 square kilometers, U.S. territory, completely cut off from the rest of the United States.
The community is positioned along the waterfront of this island.
Legend says when the 49th parallel was named the international boundary, government officials and surveyors were unaware Point Roberts inched south of the line.
Aerial view of the border between Canada and the United States in this area. Close-up of the border crossing.
More than 150 years later, it remains a cherished region for residents and visitors alike.
Cars line up at the border.
My name is Margot Griffiths, and I'm a longtime resident of Point Roberts, Washington. Historically, my family has been a part of Point Roberts since about 1905, when my mother's family had a cottage here. And in the early 70s, I moved here.
View of the wooded coastline on this island.
Point Roberts is one of the exclaves in the world, one of the very few. An exclave is a part of the United States that can only be reached by going through a foreign country, which is, of course, Canada. So to get to Point Roberts, you have to go through 2 international borders, which makes life interesting for us all, residents and guests alike.
Aerial view of Point Roberts showing roads, fields, beaches, and the jagged coastline.
It was very early settled by Icelandic people who came from Victoria. They were looking for a different life, probably a better life. And so they had a great heritage on the point. There were also canneries, fish canneries, because of all the salmon fishing off Point Roberts. And if we really want to be historical, we can think back 3,000 years when these Salish seas around Point Roberts were home to native Indians.
Because of Point Roberts' unique geography, its residents maintain close ties with their Canadian neighbors.
We depend on Canada to quite an extent. We get our water from Canada. We have reciprocal rights with the libraries. We have many, 50% of our people are from Canada.
Over 100 boats are docked in a protected inlet where houses line the coastline.
We coexist quite happily, and coexistence is probably not a strong enough word. We celebrate living together. It's good to know that Canadians and Americans can get to know each other so well.
For Griffiths and the other 1,300 residents of this exclave, Point Roberts is a special sliver of America.
Aerial view of a thickly wooded portion of the island.
I think most of us who live there are looking for a more rural environment. I love being close to nature. I ride horses. I've always had dogs. I love the peace, the oceans, and I love the community. There's a wonderful sense of that in Point Roberts.
Panoramic aerial view of the island.
When something's a little harder to get to, it makes it a little bit more special, I think.
The view pans to land beyond Point Roberts.
East of Point Roberts, we follow the 49th parallel across Boundary Bay. Beyond the communities of Delta and Surrey.
View of a densely populated area on the coastline. A long dock extends into the ocean.
At White Rock, British Columbia, and Blaine, Washington, the 49th parallel marks the international divide once again.
A straight line is cut through the woods, marking the border. Close-up of the border crossing.
The border crossing here is the busiest west of Windsor, Detroit.
The view pans out and shows a white concrete arch near the border crossing.
And is home to one of the world's great border monuments. It is the Peace Arch, dedicated in 1921 in commemoration of the signing of the Treaty of Ghent that ended the War of 1812.
The arch reads, "Children of a Common Mother."
The monument sits directly on the 49th parallel. Visitors from both countries can visit this 20-meter monument and explore the surrounding international park without encountering border security.
Aerial view shows the Peace Monument at the end of the marked borderline.
Beyond the Peace Monument, Highway 0 traces the path of the 49th parallel. It is a unique roadway leading east from the Pacific, with Canada on the left and America on the right. Through communities, woodlands, and farmland, the border lies undefended.
A helicopter follows the border path.
Though on the ground and high above, Security officials maintain a close watch here.
A white security helicopter hovers along the wooded border. Scenic shots of farms and fields.
Just 40 kilometers east of the Pacific, the BC-Washington landscape changes dramatically.
A vast area of farms and fields are surrounded by forested mountains.
Farmland is met by rolling hills, and beyond, stunning forested mountains.
The view pans from the farmlands to the lush mountains, showing a body of water at the base of the mountains in the distance. The view is beautiful. Footage changes to show snow-covered mountains.
The area is home to parks of both nations, including Washington's Silver Lake State Park and British Columbia's Cultus Lake Provincial Park.
The tips of the snow-covered mountains poke through the clouds.
Finally, on the horizon, the summit of Mount Baker is visible for kilometers. It is a glaciated volcanic peak, the third highest mountain in Washington state.
Aerial panoramic view of a rugged snow-covered mountain engulfed by clouds.
Mount Baker stands more than 3 kilometers high, with one of the highest annual snowfall accumulations anywhere in the world.
The shot zooms in on the jagged rocky peaks deeply covered in snow. A green forested mountain stands in the foreground. Various aerial views of this mountain range from different angles. Aerial view of rugged mountains, some rocky, some forested, and some snow-covered.
North of Mount Baker, Washington state, the Canada-US borderlands feature an incredible array of rock formations.
Close-up of evergreen trees growing out from a rocky mountaintop.
Here, Church Mountain soars more than 1 kilometer high, a well-known landmark for backwoods adventurers.
The peak of Church Mountain is rocky and sparse. The camera pans to show a small turquoise-colored pool of water in a mountain.
And nearby, the mountain waters of Whistler Lake are ethereal, just 10 kilometers south of Canada.
Aerial view moves along the mountain range.
Back to the border and north of the 49th parallel, the hills rise even higher.
Aerial footage shows gray rocky mountains towering into the clouds. Graphic, Mount Cheam, British Columbia, Canada.
The Cheam mountain range, located southeast of the Fraser River Valley, spans just 10 kilometers, but is home to some of the most formidable peaks in southern British Columbia. The mountains on the west are known as the Four Sisters. The four on the east as the Lucky Four group. The highest of the Lucky Four is Welch Peak. Its jagged summit soars more than 2,400 meters. Climbers consider Welch one of the area's toughest ascents.
Close-up of the mountain peaks through thin, wispy clouds.
Further northeast, the Hope Slide is an eerie landmark. This enormous mountain, located not far from the community of Hope, is missing its entire southwest slope. In the early morning hours of January 9th, 1965, 47 million cubic meters of rock crumbled and fell here. The debris was 85 meters deep and 3 kilometers wide. 4 people were killed in the disaster.
Aerial view of the Hope Slide.
It remains Western Canada's largest landslide.
View of a road at the base of the mountains.
Heading southeast toward the border, we follow the contours of the Crow's Nest Highway. It is a world-famous scenic roadway, more than 1,000 kilometers long, linking southern Alberta with British Columbia.
Aerial view of the roadway winding through the forested mountains.
And it leads to even more stunning protected parkland. E.C. Manning Provincial Park is named after Ernest Manning, Chief Forester for British Columbia in the early 20th century. He was killed in a plane crash, but during his life was instrumental in setting aside this parcel of land for generations to come.
The mountainside and valley is thickly populated with evergreen trees.
The park measures more than 58 kilometers end to end. It features thousands of hectares of rolling forested hills, deep valleys, soaring peaks, and awe-inspiring geological wonders.
Close-up of an interesting jagged rocky mountaintop.
Continuing southeast, the landscape changes again. Forests and peaks are replaced by grassy, barren hills. A rare sight along the BC-Washington interior.
Footage moving along the barren rolling hills until a straight path cut in the woods can be visible for a long distance.
Finally, just north of Sheep Mountain, Washington State, these rolling hills meet the 49th parallel.
Close-up of the straight grassy line through the forest.
The 6-meter wide cut line will continue to mark this international divide for nearly 2,000 kilometers to the end of the Manitoba-Minnesota border. Further east, the landscape of the parallel changes at Cathedral Provincial Park. Here, the cut line blazes through forested hills. And at the summit, we look down on the first of thousands of 1.5-meter obelisks. Stretching coast to coast, marking this great international frontier.
Close-up of the tall, four-sided, pointed monument. Aerial view of a forested rocky mountain range.
Northeast of Cathedral Provincial Park and north of the 49th parallel, British Columbia's interior landscape evolves yet again.
Graphic, Snowy Protected Area, British Columbia, Canada.
Snowy Protected Area was established in 2001 to provide better protection for the Okanagan Range ecosection, one of 139 unique divisions in British Columbia.
The mountaintops are less tree-covered here.
It's a dry, arid landscape, more commonly seen south of the border. The area features the greatest vertical range of ecosystems for any Canadian park, from grassland valleys to subalpine forests and alpine tundra.
Close-up of a barren rocky peak moving to show the vast mountain range hugged by clouds.
Snowy Protected Area measures more than 25,000 hectares. It borders Cathedral Provincial Park, Manning Provincial Park, Skagit Provincial Park, and North Cascades National Park in Washington State. Together, the parks combine to cover 1.2 million hectares, the largest protected wilderness area along the 49th parallel.
More aerial footage of this area, with barren hills panning to show a community in a valley that has a river running through it.
Beyond the northern boundary of Snowy Protected Area, we reach the village of Karamias.
This scenic village sits at the base of two mountain ranges.
It is a hub of agriculture and ranching, set on the waters of the Similkameen River.
Close-up of the winding river through the village.
The river began carving its path here some 200 million years ago. Today, it is the lifeblood of the valley region, sustaining farmland and agricultural resources key to the economy here.
The river winds through the fields in this valley.
The Similkameen measures 197 kilometers, joining the Okanagan River and the Columbia River south of the 49th parallel, through Washington, Oregon, and finally the Pacific. Southeast of the river, just north of the border, one of the region's best-known landscapes lies below. British Columbia's southern grasslands are a unique sight. Bunch grasses, wildflowers, and dryland shrubs.
The hills are gently rolling and look soft with the soil.
Grasslands cover less than 1% of BC's land area, and they are in danger, threatened by expanding communities and the development of farmland, orchards, and vineyards.
Close-up of an area that looks like a rippled crater.
They are one of Canada's most endangered ecosystems, a trend the Nature Conservancy of Canada is hoping to end.
A woman walks on the grasslands.
My name is Barb Price. I'm the Southern Interior Program Manager for the Nature Conservancy of Canada, and we are on the Sage and Sparrow Conservation Area. We are southwest of the border town of Osoyoos, British Columbia, which is just north of Oroville, Washington State. This conservation area was purchased by the Nature Conservancy of Canada in November 2012. And we were very interested in acquiring these lands because these sagebrush grasslands, blue bunch wheatgrass ecosystems are very rare and endangered in Canada.
Footage of her walking in this area.
There's not many of them left. They've been subject to development in other parts of the South Okanagan-Similkameen, and so that's why this has become a focus for our work in conservation in this area.
Sage and sparrow is also host to a diverse array of animals. It is a unique geographical habitat along the 49th parallel.
These properties have a multitude of species on them. There are many bird species. There's one part of the property where we know of over 9 species of sparrow, for example. One thing we do with bird inventories, for example, is we want to know what species are here, what are their numbers, what kind of habitats are they using. We keep records of them and we track change in population numbers and viability over time.
She inspects a tree through her binoculars and makes notes.
This is an interesting conservation area because it does butt up against the Canada-US border. We share several miles of border between our two countries, and so it creates a connectivity with habitats in Washington State as well.
Close-up of a warning United States boundary sign and barbed wire fence.
This fence is the Canada-US border, and we're particularly excited about this landscape because it is the northern extent of many species at risk and their habitat. And so it joins the Great Basin to the south in the United States with the southern interior of British Columbia.
Zoom in on a metal gate post.
This gate hasn't always been here. There used to be a cattle guard at this location. And so, you know, my understanding is there was fairly free access across the Canada-US border. But some time ago, you know, security was increased and this fence and this gate was put in.
Footage of rolling grasslands with sparse vegetation.
Since the Nature Conservancy of Canada purchased the lands, we've made contact with the U.S. Border Security Services, and we just want them to know that we're good neighbors, that we're just out here doing our science and our monitoring. You know, we're a conservation organization, and we just want to have a good, positive relationship with them.
Aerial view of the grasslands.
These lands are incredibly special. Because of the grasslands here, the sagebrush slopes areas that we have, there's so little of it left in Canada. For me personally, it's a real privilege to be able to work here and to know that we are creating habitat and maintaining habitat for the over 30 species of risk that occur here and nowhere else in Canada. And the scale at which we're able to work, we've conserved over 3,100 acres of grasslands and associated ecosystems. So for me personally, it's a huge honor to be a part of conservation at scale, such as we have done here.
In the distance, Barb Price walks along the grasslands. Aerial view of a scenic community in a valley, sitting between the mountains on a body of water.
Just east of the Sage and Sparrow Conservation Area, the vineyards and orchards of the town of Oliver lead to the border community of Osoyoos.
Graphic, Osoyoos, British Columbia. Aerial footage pans to show the lush green fields and water running through the mountains.
The town is surrounded by dry, arid hills. It is one of the hottest regions in Canada. with just 30 centimeters of rainfall each year.
Close-up of the community, with most buildings located near the waterfront.
Osoyoos has become known as Canada's only desert.
The mountains behind this community are mostly brown.
Amazingly, hundreds of unique plant and animal species make this landscape their home. Including one unexpected creature that is struggling to survive.
A sign reads, "Be alert, watch for rattlesnakes."
My name is Laura Gardner, and I'm a biologist at the Inkmeep Desert Cultural Center. And we're currently in Osoyoos, which is at the very southern end of the Okanagan Valley in Canada, so pretty much right on the US border.
Close-up of an insect in the dry grass.
This area is referred to as the Sonoran Desert, but it's not actually a true desert, so it's what's referred to as a living desert. So it's not as barren as the stereotypical like Sahara desert. There's a lot of vegetation here.
Close-up of a small cactus.
That is due to a few major factors, one of which is climate. So this is more of a semi-arid type of climate. It's not as dry.
Close-up of an animal skull.
It does get very hot in the summer, so up to over 40 degrees Celsius, but in the winter it can get down to minus 20. So it's also what's referred to as a cold desert. As a biologist at the center, I'm helping out with the snake research program. And what it is, it's a long-term study of snake habitat use and their response to human development in the area. The focus of the project so far has been the western rattlesnake.
Laura reaches for a tub containing a rattlesnake. She opens the lid and a coiled-up rattlesnake sits inside.
It is a species at risk. They're federally listed as threatened. And that's due to a few major factors. The biggest one is habitat loss, and that is from agriculture and urban development. They also suffer from deliberate persecution and direct mortality, so just public fear in general of bites and envenomation. They suffer a lot from that.
Today, Gardner and her field assistant Jim Song are going to release a captured rattlesnake back into the wild.
Jim lifts a white cloth bag containing a rattlesnake and places it in a plastic storage tub.
But first, they will coax the snake into a protective tube where they will determine its sex, record data, and inject a pit tag, allowing them to record the snake's progress over time.
Jim holds a long transparent tube.
So Jim is going to use it's called a snake hook and a snake tube. And he's going to try and get the snake to get his head in the tube and start moving up the tube. And then once he gets to a certain point, he's going to wrap his hand around the bottom of the tube and the snake, so then the snake can't back out.
The snake is halfway up the tube.
Okay, cool. So this is a set of sexing probes to determine whether the snake is male or female. And we just use the smallest probe. And first we dip it in alcohol as a disinfectant, and then we dip it in saline as a lubricant.
Gardner inserts the probe. She is able to determine the sex of the snake by how far it extends inside this section of its body.
So to sex them, we lift up that scale.
The female body will resist the probe. The male body will not.
And then see, it's in the pocket right there. And it's sliding all the way down. So if I hold my thumb there, pull it out, you can see how much of the probe went in. So that's a male.
They are now ready to attach the tag.
So that's the pit tag itself. The pit tag's inside the needle there. And then you just put it on this device here to inject the pit tag.
As a precaution, they scan the snake to make sure it has not already been tagged.
It reads, "No ID found."
They are safe to proceed.
So we just sterilize the area. And we pinch up the skin like that. And then I'm going to inject it backwards towards the tail. So are you ready for it? Okay.
She prepares to inject the tag into the snake's tail.
So after we inject the pit tag, we seal the hole from the needle with this glue.
Glue is placed on the snake's tail.
And then we scan it one more time. Yeah, and it works.
The snake is placed back in the storage container. Then Jim uses the hook to lift the snake back into the cloth bag, and a knot is tied at the end.
With the snake tagged, Gardner and Song head a safe distance from the nearby resort and golf course to execute the release.
They pass through a gate and remove the cloth bag from a backpack. Jim unties the knot and gently shakes the snake out of the bag.
The snake heads for cover.
He's just trying to go into cover, undercover, because he sees us as predators for one thing, and also because it's quite hot out, so he's trying to get into the shade.
The snake slowly slithers away.
I really enjoy my work because the results of the study will be used in conservation strategies to help these animals out, and preserve these native species in the native habitat for generations to come.
Laura and her colleague explore the base of a bush with a snake hook.
I think snakes are really cool animals. They exist on every biome on Earth except for the Arctic. An amazing ability to adapt.
Aerial view of a winding dirt road through arid rolling hills. Transitioning to the view of a community in a valley at the base of a mountain range. Then to a dockyard with the city of Vancouver in the background.
From the metropolitan splendor of Vancouver,
View of Vancouver from above a local forested mountaintop.
and the Pacific border region.
The 49th parallel extends from the Peace Arch
to the unique frontiers and American exclaves charted more than a century ago.
Aerial view of the 49th parallel line cut into an island, and then to a patchwork of fields.
To the stunning rolling grasslands and mountain faces of the interior.
Close-up of a rocky, jagged mountain peak.
British Columbia's western border region is an incredible palette of landscapes. For those who cherish this region, these are landscapes worth exploring and worth protecting.
Images of the diverse mountain ranges. Arid, sparse, and thickly forested, with a river running at the base. Nature
that knows no bounds. Here, on the edge of Canada.